Okay, so 2026 is here. It's time to start planning out what you're gonna read this year. I have a great, I think, list of books I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna break down what I'm reading this year across multiple genres, why I'm reading it, why it's on the top of my list, and I'm gonna go through one by one quick little synopses of every book I'm gonna plan on reading this year. And I'm gonna try to explain why I think you should maybe try to check out some of these books as well. I'll be honest with you, I read a lot of bad books in 2025, so this year I'm trying to read only the best, and I'm planning out what I'm reading to the best of my ability. I'm sort of forecasting what is going to be a priority for me early in the year, and I'm going to try to hit the ground running and read more books this year than I did last year. Always a challenge for me. I have a small child. I'm having another one this year, not to brag, but that is why I have to sort of plan these things out, and that's why I think it's sort of important to do things like this, or sort of set goals and figure out what I'm going to read for the coming year. So without further ado, these are my planned reads for 2026. Okay, I'm starting off the year with a big one, The Stand by Stephen King. This is the iconic post-apocalyptic novel, some say his best book ever. I'm about, I want to say 3/4 of the way through this one. It's a 1,200-page epic. It is unbelievable. It is incredible, the backstory he brings to a lot of these characters. This world building is also incredible. It's about a virus that sort of knocks out 97% of the world's population. I'm really enjoying it so far. Every year I try to start the year with a longer book, because I think that when I have the most sort of motivation to get through one of these longer novels is really at the start of the year. So that's why I'm tackling this massive behemoth of a book early in the year. But I love Stephen King. This is sort of one of the great works of his that I haven't quite finished yet. And so I wanted to check that one off my list early on in the year. Next up for me, another book that's been at the top of my list for a long time, and that is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. This is one that constantly gets recommended here, gets recommended everywhere. I actually recently got to like the last couple pages of this book, so I'm almost done with it. Really enjoying it so far. It's another really great read, but it's a lit RPG book, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that basically is a video game RPG come to life, where you're with this character who is there when the world ends, but he's actually taken into this sort of RPG dungeon television show that is being broadcast across the universe, and he can save his life by surviving this thing. He has a cat that comes along with him. It's funny. It's got a lot of humor to it. I did not expect to like this book as much as I did. I find that some of this self-referential, pop culture referencey writing is not for me. Ready Player One, Looking at You, did not like a lot of that book. I really enjoyed Dungeon Crawler Carl. There's a lot of good humor in these books, and I like that it doesn't take itself too seriously. So to the extent that there is cringe stuff going on in these books, I think the writer's aware of it and sort of hangs a lamp on them, which I can really appreciate. So Dungeon Crawler Carl is one of my early favorites. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I'm definitely looking forward to diving further into this series this year. Okay, so I hit 2 fiction books, big ones, to start off the year. Now I want to dive into some nonfiction stuff. Starting off with When the Clock Broke by John Gantz. I love conspiracy books, especially ones about why people believe what they believe. The book looks into the cultural and political breakdown of the late 20th century and how distrust and paranoia and fringe thinking went mainstream in the 1990s. If you're even somewhat interested in the idea of why ideas spread and why misinformation spreads and why we have so much paranoid thinking in our current society, current climate, I think this book would be good for you. I think it'd be maybe up your alley as well. Next up, Devil's Knot by Mara Leverett. It's a deep dive into the Memphis 3 case, one of the most controversial true crime cases in the history of modern America. It's about the satanic panic, it's about injustice, it's about how badly the system can fail, it's about how wrapped up we as a society get in the dumbest things and how that can essentially destroy people's lives. I know a lot about the Memphis 3 case. Look it up if you don't want to dive into that. This isn't a true crime video, but I do like a true crime book. I haven't read a lot of good ones in recent years, but this is sort of regarded as a classic in the genre, so I'm looking forward to diving into this one and hopefully learning more about this whole sort of situation. Next up, Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. Big fan of John Green as a person. I know he's a big YouTuber guy, put together a massive channel with his brother, has written some fiction that I somewhere between like and find bad, but very smart thinker, really interesting modern person in terms of how he interacts with the media and how he interacts with social media. And I really appreciate hearing him talk about stuff. So he wrote this book called Everything is Tuberculosis, which is a nonfiction book about tuberculosis. It's not just a disease, it's like a lens into inequality and global health and how society works and solves problems. How tuberculosis kind of shaped the world that we live in and it shaped how we think about problems. So I'm really looking forward to checking this one out as well because, again, I appreciate John Green as a thinker. I almost think I'm certain to enjoy this book more than a lot of his fiction because I found kind of a lot of his fiction not to be up my alley and a little bit more YA, young adult focus. So transitioning to this more adult, nonfiction, sort of pop sociology stuff, I think is a smart pivot for him, but he's not taking career advice from me. He is a star of the fiction and writing world and the YouTube world. So obviously he's doing something right, and I cannot wait to dive into Everything Is Tuberculosis. Next up, Recursion by Blake Crouch. Crouch is a go-to author for me. It feels like binge watching a television show every time I read one of his books. Recursion is a science fiction book, another one sort of in the dark matter vein. It deals with memory and time and reality and how dangerous it would be if we could all rewrite our own past. It's a high concept sci-fi book, but it's going to be grounded, I would assume, because that's how Blake Crouch kind of writes his fiction. I recently read one of the Wayward Pines books by Blake Crouch, and I do really enjoy just the way that he tells stories. He has a very specific style that I really appreciate. It feels very cinematic, very much like a movie script. And these books kind of fly by, so love Blake Crouch and definitely going to be checking out Recursion this year. Next up, The Odyssey, the translation by Emily Wilson. This one's been on my radar for a while, but I need to read it before the Christopher Nolan adaptation comes out next summer. I read this in school, like most people did. Everyone says that Emily Wilson's adaptation or translation is the best, clearest modern version of the story, and it's the foundation for so much storytelling going forward. So it feels like the right moment to dive into a classic, historical work of fiction in preparation for what I assume is going to be one of the biggest movies of 2026. Next up, The 12 by Justin Cronin. This is the second book in the Passage trilogy, which is a sprawling, post-apocalyptic, vampire, Stephen King adjacent series of novels. It expands the world massively from my understanding. I read the first one a number of years ago. I really liked it, but these books are long. So I think I kind of just didn't want to dive into the second book after reading the first one because I felt like drained after reading a long novel in a way that I often do. I think a lot of people often do. You read a long book, you're like, I need to cleanse after that one. That was it took a lot out of me. I did really enjoy Justin Cronin's writing. So, I mean, this book's got vampires, it's got violence, it's got post-apocalyptic societies. It's very much in conversation with The Stand, and I think those two books get compared to each other a lot, and I see why, having now almost finished The Stand. Looking forward to continue my post-apocalyptic sort of run that I'm on in these longer sort of novels, and I'll update you guys once I finish this book and hopefully finish this series maybe in 2026. Next up, The Predicament is a 2025 spy novel by William Boyd. It's part of, I guess, a series, the Gabriel Dax series. I had this book recommended to me. It's about a travel writer who gets recruited by MI6. I guess this isn't the first one in the series, but I will look to read William Boyd's travel writer series. I think it's called the Dax series of some kind, but it's a Cold War spy novel, and I love Cold War spy novels. That's just my stuff right there. Cold War spy fiction, that is my jam. You tell me you got a story about a travel writer roped into some Cold War spy fiction, some British stuff going on, I am all ears. I am game. The Predicament, William Boyd, I'm all in. I'm diving into the series. I hope to finish it. Who knows if I'll be able to do it, but it's certainly on my radar. Next up, Rogue Heroes, the history of the SAS, Britain's secret special forces unit that sabotaged the Nazis and changed the nature of war, by Ben Macintyre. Now, I've talked about other Ben Macintyre books on this channel. His nonfiction spy espionage storytelling is amongst the best nonfiction writing I've ever read. He's written some of my favorite nonfiction books of all time, including The Spy and the Traitor, which I just read last year. I've heard this is amongst his best work. It was turned into a series by MGM Plus, Amazon, I guess. Came out a few years ago, had a second season recently. I know some people who love that series, and again, it's an adaptation of this classic story about the secret fighting force set up in the English government, set up by the English government. And you know, I said before I like spy fiction. I also like spy nonfiction. So this is definitely tickling that fancy, and I have a television show to binge watch after I read it. So this is another one where I'm sort of preparing myself for an adaptation. I love to read things before I get to the adaptations. I think that adds to the experience, and I think it's a lot of fun. Okay, another work of fiction here, The Hedge Knight by George R.R. Martin. I read some non-Game of Thrones George R.R. Martin last year. His book about tugboats in the Mississippi River and vampires. I think it's Fever Dream? Fever Dream? Nice. Great book. Great book. I really liked it. Kind of long, kind of self-indulgent, very George R.R. Martin-esque. So I've heard that these books are a little more grounded. I have heard that they're novellas. They're really 3 short novellas about this guy who gets roped up with his squire, and it's kind of a more grounded storytelling versus the kings and knights and dragons of the other Game of Thrones books, and they're kind of on the fringes. And at some level, I think that George is a killer at writing those everyman stories, and the elements of Game of Thrones that really, really work and really, really crush it are those parts of the story. So for me, I'm looking forward to checking out this book, again, to prepare for a television series that is debuting any day now. That's going to be the HBO adaptation of the series. So obviously I'm going to try to read all 3 novellas. Hopefully by the time the series is done, I'll have all 3 of them finished. But if not, I'm not going to pressure myself to really crush them. But I've heard they're all really excellent. And again, another highly recommended series for you. Short reads. So if you're looking for something short, quick, punchy, check these out. Okay, 2 more here, just some quick comic books. First is Spectators by Brian K. Vaughan. Huge Brian K. Vaughan fan. Love Why the Last Man Loves Saga. Why the Last Man is one of my favorite works of fiction in any genre, in any format. And the Spectators graphic novel, I've heard, is very rated R. I've heard nothing but good things about it, though, so I'm looking forward to checking that out in a day or 2. It seems like a quicker read as well. If you're into comic books, maybe look into that. The other one is Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run. I've started this and kind of gone off and on with it, but I want to finish it before Avengers Doomsday comes out at the end of the year, because it feels like a lot of what goes on in this Fantastic Four run is going to heavily influence the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which, you know, like everybody else, I'm not as devoted to necessarily, but I'm ready to be roped back in. Hickman's writing is awesome. He's a very twisty sort of writer, and I think he incorporates a lot of like crime and mystery storytelling into his superhero stories. He is a father of the genre. His Ultimate Spider-Man run made me love comic books when I was a kid, so I always love Hickman, and looking forward to finishing this run at some point this year. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you guys found some things you'd maybe like to read this year as well for yourself. Until later, I will talk to you guys soon. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more of these videos. Bye now.